So, if you're out there looking for a job right now, I bet it feels like you're just screaming into the void, right? You send out application after application, and all you get back is silence. It's so frustrating, it's demoralizing, and I want you to know you are definitely not alone. So, let's get into it. Let's dive into why the modern job market just feels, well, broken.
I mean, it's the question on everyone's mind, isn't it? You hear on the news that the US economy is growing, things are looking up, but for job seekers on the ground, the reality feels completely different. It tells a totally different story. So, what's really going on behind those headlines? Well, the data, it paints a pretty stark picture.
All right, take a look at this number 43%. What is that? Well, the New York Fed asked people a simple question. If you lost your job today, how confident are you that you could find a new one? And only 43% said they felt confident. That's the lowest level of confidence in the job market we've seen in over 12 years. You can see why people feel like the ground is shifting right under their feet. And look, it's not just a feeling. The numbers back it up. The actual number of job openings in the US, it's dropped to 6.54 million. Now, to put that into perspective for you, we haven't seen a number that low since September 2020. I mean, think about that. We were right in the thick of the pandemic then. So yeah, it's pretty clear something major is going on here. Okay, so to really understand why this is happening, we've got to look at two big economic forces that are basically putting a chokehold on hiring right now: tariffs and inflation. And I know these can sound like abstract, boring economic terms, but trust me, they have very real-world consequences for businesses. And that means they have consequences for anyone out there looking for a job. So first up, tariffs. The basic idea is actually pretty simple. You just put a tax on goods that are imported from other countries. The goal? To make your own country's products look cheaper and more attractive. It's one of the oldest tools in the economic toolbox, right? It's designed to protect jobs at home and boost local production. But as we're about to see, theory and reality don't always line up. And yeah, you can see that disconnect perfectly right here. The goal of the recent US tariffs: help American industry. Simple. But the reality? It was a whole different story. All of a sudden, companies were facing higher costs for raw materials, which forced them to cut back. So instead of protecting jobs, all this uncertainty just led to slower hiring. And get this, the unemployment rate actually climbed to 4.4%. You know, Dean Baker from the Center for Economic and Policy Research, he really puts it perfectly. When companies can't predict what their costs are going to be, they avoid taking risks. It's just smart business. And what's one of the biggest, most expensive risks a company can take? Yep, hiring a new employee, someone who needs weeks, maybe months of training before they even start to become profitable. And this uncertainty, it has hit new college grads especially hard. I mean, just look at this. Back in the fall of 2024, employers were feeling pretty optimistic. They were planning to hire over 7% more grads. But fast forward to 2025 and boof, that optimism just evaporated. Planned hiring plummeted to less than 1%. For the 2 million students in the class of 2025, the sting of that shift is, you guessed it, incredibly real. Okay, so now let's throw inflation into the mix. Rising costs are hitting everyone, but they are absolutely crushing small businesses. Just get a load of this. In November 2025, just 1 month, American businesses with fewer than 50 employees shed a combined 120,000 jobs. Why? Because when money is tight, it just makes more financial sense to ask your existing employees to wear multiple hats instead of taking on the cost of hiring someone new.
And you know what? It's not just the small businesses feeling the pain. The big corporations are going through what some people are calling the Great Correction. See, after this massive hiring spree during the pandemic to meet all the new demand, huge companies like Amazon, Pinterest, and UPS, well, they're now aggressively trimming what they see as bloated workforces to cut costs. And what does that mean for you? It means thousands upon thousands of very experienced people are suddenly back on the job market, all competing for the same few spots.
But look, tariffs and inflation, they're only part of the story. There's another, much more fundamental force that's reshaping the entire world of work as we know it: artificial intelligence. And this is really important. This isn't just another up and down economic cycle. No, this feels more like a deep structural change, and it's creating a very strange new paradox. Goldman Sachs actually has a name for this. They call it jobless growth. And here's what it means. It's when AI allows companies to become way more efficient, increase their value for shareholders, all while cutting their payroll. This leads to that strange paradox I mentioned. The overall economy grows, but unemployment can actually grow right alongside it.
It's a weird situation. And this timeline right here, well, it makes the connection pretty much impossible to ignore. In 2024, the US economy added 2 million jobs. Great. But then, in 2025, as AI really started to seep into every corner of the business world, job creation just fell off a cliff. It plummeted to just 181,000 jobs for the entire year. That is not a coincidence. And if you think that's bad, the projections for the future are even more concerning. Goldman Sachs estimates that AI could be eliminating somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 jobs every single month. And let's be clear, these aren't just abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. We're talking about real careers, real livelihoods, potentially being automated away. And believe it or not, that might actually be the optimistic view. By the end of 2026, that same projection could climb as high as 20,000 jobs lost per month. Per month. If these forecasts are even close to being right, AI could ultimately erase 6 to 7% of all jobs in the economy. Professor Konstantin Bergy warns that we shouldn't think of this as just a temporary dip. He says it's more like a fundamental restructuring of the entire economy. And his point is, frankly, terrifyingly simple. If companies discover that AI can do a job cheaper and more efficiently than a person, well then those jobs probably aren't coming back. Ever. They could be gone for good. Okay, so we've looked at the big picture stuff, right? The economic squeeze, the AI disruption. But let's bring it back down to earth. What does all of this actually mean for you, the person who's just trying to get hired? Well, it means you have to navigate a process that feels less like applying for a job and more like running an impossible, totally infuriating gauntlet. I mean, does any of this sound familiar to you? You see an entry-level job that somehow requires 3 to 5 years of experience. Or how about going through 3, 4, even 5 rounds of interviews and take-home tests only to get completely ghosted? Or getting that classic email saying they moved forward with another candidate from a pool of hundreds of highly qualified people. It's a shared modern nightmare, for sure. And just when you think it can't get any worse, here's something that will really blow your mind. You might be spending hours applying for jobs that don't even exist. Yeah, it's a real thing. This phenomenon is called ghost jobs, and one study found that a staggering 40% of companies admitted to posting job listings that they weren't actually trying to fill. So what exactly are these ghost jobs? Well, they aren't necessarily scams from shady companies. No, they're often from real, legitimate companies that are maybe just gauging the talent pool, or they're keeping their options open for the future, or maybe they had a sudden budget cut and had to pause hiring. But for you, the job seeker, the result is exactly the same: wasted time and a whole lot of false hope. So when you put this all together, the process is just grueling. First, you have to try and sift through the real job listings and the ghost ones. Then you have to tailor your resume for dozens of applications just to have a chance of standing out from hundreds of other people. Then you have to survive multiple lengthy interview rounds. And after all that, you just wait. It's absolutely no wonder people say that looking for a job is a full-time job in itself. So, where does all this leave us? Really, we're caught in a perfect storm, aren't we? You've got economic pressure, massive technological disruption, and a hiring process that feels completely stacked against the applicant. So let's just recap the core challenges that job seekers are facing right now. It really boils down to this brutal trifecta. First, you have the economic squeeze. Tariffs and inflation have companies terrified of taking on risks, so they just stop hiring. Second, you have the AI disruption, which is introducing this whole new world of jobless growth, where company profits go up while their headcounts go down. And third, all of that leads to the hiring gauntlets, that exhausting, frustrating process that's just filled with dead ends and ghost jobs. And all of this leaves us with a really profound and honestly kind of scary question. If companies can keep making more and more money with fewer and fewer people, and if the economy can technically grow while actual job opportunities are shrinking, have we entered a fundamentally new era of work? Is this just the new normal? And if it is, what on earth do we do about it? That's the question I think we all have to start facing.